Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Mr Deputy President. I would like to associate myself with the beautiful sentiments that have been expressed this evening in condolence to Pope Francis, Catholics all around the world and those who are saddened from his passing. Jesus Christ told his followers to be the salt of the earth, and Pope Francis definitely lived up to that admonition in being a pope who added flavour to the Catholic Church and to the world. As many have remarked tonight, he did take significantly controversial and impactful positions on matters of climate change, on wars in Eastern Europe and the Middle East, and the reform of the Church as well, as has been expressed in the practices of the Synod and other measures. I did not agree with all of those sentiments that the Pope sometimes expressed, but as a Catholic I'd much prefer a Pope I disagreed with than one that provoked no reaction at all. And the Lord does work in mysterious ways, and the reaction that Pope Francis's decisions sometimes had were perhaps different than he intended, because somewhat ironically, for a Pope that did seek to modernise practices within the Catholic Church, it has coincided with the greatest flourishing of traditional Catholicism seen for many centuries. Many young Catholics find themselves now much more attracted to the traditional Latin Mass, and despite the attempts of Rome to suppress those practices, they are flourishing somewhat underground in the strong traditions of the early Church. And so the Pope Francis's pontificate will have enormous ramifications through the Church long after his passing. We, I suppose, in modern times would consider that admonition of Jesus Christ in the Sermon on the Mount to be the salt of the earth to mean to add flavour, to be salty, because that's typically how we use salt in modern times. In Jesus' times, though, salt was primarily used to preserve meat and other foodstuffs for longer-term use. And clearly one of the sentiments that Jesus Christ meant in the Sermon on the Mount was to preserve the moral foundations of his teachings, and Pope Francis did also live up to that element of Jesus' teaching. Pope Francis was very traditional in his sentiments on major modern issues. He referred to the enormous increases in the practice of abortion as murder and as part of a throwaway culture. He stood up for the traditional view of marriage between a man and a woman, calling such an institution the first cell of society. And indeed, it does seem like we have lost something in that we no longer really have a word to describe the formation, the creation of a life, which happens with the union of a man and a woman. That's something that the Catholic Church continues to stand up for. And Pope Francis also was strongly rejected what he called gender ideology, and stood up for the principle that the human body is a gift from God, not something to be manipulated. And I'm sure the Catholic Church will continue to preserve these moral traditions that are not always popular or in fashion, but do require a defence. And despite the criticism, the fascination, sometimes the contempt that many have for the Catholic Church, it was to me instructive to see that the passing of both Pope Francis and the election of new Pope Leo XIV fascinated the world for months. Catholics and non-Catholics alike, the world's eyes were on Rome and on Vatican and the goings-on in the Vatican at the time. And to me, that shows the importance of defending the faith, defending on what people do think is the right faith, despite the criticism. The Vatican itself, of course, was built on Nero's Circus, where St. Peter was crucified for having views that were not popular and not shared by the political leaders of the time. But despite the persecution of those early Catholics, that faith, my faith, has survived, has flourished, and in triumph it has built perhaps the greatest church or religious building in the world upon the very parts, the very place where early Catholics were persecuted. And indeed, if you have the chance to go into St. Peter's and you look up at the dome, a bit like our dome up there, you will see the words in Latin say, "Tu Petrus et super hanc Petrum edificabo ecclesiam meum, thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church." And long may the Catholic Church flourish upon that rock. God bless Pope Francis, and all the best to Pope Leo XIV, his election and his coming pontificate.
Senator Hodgins.